You opened an app, typed something you'd never say out loud, and pressed send. Maybe it was about your anxiety, your drinking, your thoughts at 3 a.m. You felt better. What you didn't know is that the conversation you just had with that app was processed, packaged, and in many cases sold to a data broker before you even closed your phone. In 2023, the Mozilla Foundation reviewed 32 of the top mental health apps and found that 25 of them failed their basic privacy standards. That's 78%. And that was before the industry doubled in size. The mental health app market crossed $6 billion in annual revenue in 2025. There are now over 20,000 of these apps available across major platforms. Millions of people downloaded them during and after the pandemic when therapist waitlists stretched to months and in-person care became unreachable. These apps position themselves as safe spaces, digital journals, compassionate listeners. And people trusted them with the kind of information that, in the wrong hands, can cost you a job, a custody case, a security clearance, or a health insurance premium. This isn't a theoretical risk. In 2024, a court case in Illinois revealed that mood tracking data from a popular journaling app had been subpoenaed as evidence in a civil dispute. The user had no idea their private entries could be accessed that way. Insurance actuaries are increasingly using behavioral data to refine risk models. If a data broker has sold your depression self-assessments to a health data aggregator, and that aggregator licenses its profiles to insurers, the math is already working against you before you ever file a claim. Two distinct and real consequences. Your premiums go up, or coverage gets quietly restructured around your profile. Neither requires anyone to tell you why. To understand how we got here, you have to go back to the early 2010s, when Silicon Valley's dominant business model became what Harvard professor Shoshana Zuboff later called surveillance capitalism. The idea was simple and ruthless. Collect behavioral data, model it, and sell access to those models to advertisers, insurers, and anyone else who would pay. Social media companies normalized this. Most users accepted it as the price of free services. Then mental health apps arrived. They weren't free in the same way, some charged subscription fees, but they adopted the same underlying data infrastructure because that infrastructure was already built, already cheap, and already legal. HIPAA, the American law most people assume protects all health data, has a critical gap. It only covers data held by healthcare providers and insurers. An app that is not classified as a medical device and is not affiliated with a hospital is largely outside HIPAA's reach. Think of it this way. A diary is protected by the lock on your drawer, but a digital diary is protected only by whatever the company decides to write in its terms of service. In 2023, the Federal Trade Commission took action against BetterHelp, one of the largest online therapy platforms in the world. The FTC found that BetterHelp had shared users' mental health data with Facebook and Snapchat for advertising purposes. The settlement was $7.8 million. That sounds significant until you realize BetterHelp generated roughly $300 million in revenue in 2022 alone. The fine was effectively 2.6 cents on every dollar earned. But the BetterHelp case revealed something more disturbing than one company's behavior. It showed the specific mechanism. Intake questionnaires, which asked users if they had ever been depressed, if they had ever been to therapy before, what they were seeking help for, were being used to build advertising audiences. A user who disclosed prior suicidal ideation became part of a custom audience segment. That segment could then be licensed. The person filled out what felt like a clinical intake form. What they were actually doing was building their own advertising profile around their most vulnerable data points. The mechanism works like this. When you sign up for a mental health app, you typically agree to terms of service that grant the company broad rights to anonymize and share data. The word anonymize sounds protective. It is not. Researchers at MIT demonstrated in 2019 that 87% of Americans can be uniquely identified using only their zip code, birth date, and gender. Anonymized mental health data combined with those three fields is no longer anonymous. From there, the app's data may flow to a third-party analytics SDK embedded in the app's code. A software development kit, or SDK, is essentially a small program inside the app that collects behavioral information. How long you spend on certain screens, what you type, when you open the app, what you skip. That data gets sent to the SDK's parent company, which may be headquartered in a country with entirely different privacy laws. The parent company sells access to data aggregators. Aggregators sell to brokers. Brokers sell to anyone willing to pay. By the time your intake response about panic attacks reaches its final buyer, it has passed through 5 or 6 corporate hands, each one legally insulated from the one before it. This is where it gets genuinely dangerous. A 2024 investigation by the Markup found that several major mental health apps were still sending sensitive user data to Google and Meta even after the BetterHelp fine. One app sent data indicating users were experiencing thoughts of self-harm. Another transmitted information about users seeking help for substance abuse. In both cases, this data was transmitted through tracking pixels, small invisible images embedded in the app's interface that fire a signal to an advertising server each time a user views a page. Mental health professionals operate under strict confidentiality codes. The apps they inspired operate under almost none. And there is a second complication growing quickly: AI-driven therapy bots. Several apps now use large language models to conduct open-ended therapeutic conversations. These conversations are stored as training data. When you tell an AI chatbot that you're struggling with your marriage, that information may be used to improve the model's future responses. Your pain becomes product improvement. Here is what this means for you specifically. If you use any of the major mental health apps including Calm, Headspace, Woebot, Talkspace, BetterHelp, or any of the dozens of smaller mood trackers and journaling apps, you should assume your data is being shared with third parties unless you have explicitly verified otherwise in their current privacy policy, not a cached version from 2 years ago. If you are applying for a job that requires a security clearance, a background investigation increasingly involves data brokers. In 2025, several federal agencies began contracting with commercial data aggregators as supplements to traditional background checks. If your mental health disclosures have made their way into a broker's database, they may surface in ways you cannot predict or contest. There is something concrete you can do today. Delete apps you do not actively need. For those you keep, go into your phone's privacy settings and revoke permissions for tracking and data sharing. Look for apps that are explicitly HIPAA compliant or have been independently audited by